And you go through the California Public Utilities Commission to get your system blessed, just like you would if you were the BART system or a people mover system at an airport. The kind of safety issues you want to deal with are handling earthquakes and a truck crashing into your column, and fires and bad people and extreme weather and so forth. And what you really want to prevent is having to evacuate people with one of these cherry pickers. So for the Ultra system, you can actually walk on this guideway, and they have actually, at Heathrow, they have safety rails, so you wouldn't actually fall off the side, which is rather important. And then because we're fitting into existing environments, we think a lot about how to be visually unobtrusive, so maybe hanging off the sides of buildings like this, and then we used to have guideway like this, and we modified it so we let a lot more light through. So you try to let as much light through so these aren't sort of imposing, darkening, elevated structures. And then we also look at building trenches and then putting glass on top of them that people can walk over. So, you know, trying to figure out clever ways to fit into the existing environment. And so we talked about San Jose Airport. Right off of Oakland, there's the island of Alameda, so there's a proposal to put in a system here to connect a new residential development to the BART station here. And you end up with problems like this. You have to go 65 feet in the air on a lift bridge.
I've been there.
To get over the channel here. And people always want to know about cost for this system. So it's about $15 million per one-way mile. But it depends on how busy the system is going to be and how fancy you're going to make the stations and so forth. This is from a costing, basically taking the Heathrow costs and moving them over to the U.S. And for Bay Area seismic requirements, it's a little bit more expensive because of earthquakes. But other costs are going to be different. So with that, just wanted to give like kind of an introduction to PRT.
Founder of Propel Fuels here in Sacramento. Propel was founded in 2004 and builds, operates a growing network of ethanol-based fueling stations. The other cool things on his resume I found is quite the outdoors enthusiast with both fly fishing and it sounds like rock climbing as a ex-outward bound instructor. Background has worked in both 3M and the communications industry as a BA in anthropology from Hamlin University in Minnesota. So please welcome Rob Elam.
You weren't supposed to read that far down in that bio.
Uh-oh.
Hello. Yeah, there we go. All right. Thank you. And thanks to two gentlemen who preceded me. I thought I'd talk a little bit about Propel, which is the project and the business that I work on. I would say in contrast to some of the long-term work that CARB is doing and some of the really interesting projects that around transportation, Propel is very much a here and now company that is focused on getting the technologies that we think are there on the transportation and low carbon side into the hands of consumers who will buy them today. Because we think ultimately for any of this to work, consumers are going to have to be empowered to have access to these low carbon solutions. And in fact, consumers will buy what they want to buy. And they still buy way more SUVs than they do hybrid vehicles even today. So we need to figure out this nut of how do you make low carbon alternatives attractive to the largest proportion of the emissions market. And so that's really where Propel is working these days. So our mission is to build access to low carbon fuels for both the fleet and individual consumers. Today in California there are over 2 million alternative fuel capable vehicles that are running on essentially 100% petroleum. By 2012 there'll be about 5 million primarily diesel and flex fuel vehicles on California's roads. You have a plug-in hybrid category, a hydrogen category, CNG category and an electric vehicle category, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we see those categories developing shortly. But ultimately, even with these millions of alternative fuel-capable vehicles on the road, there's absolutely no access to the alternative fuels that they've been designed to run. Americans have been so disenfranchised in this regard that I don't think we even truly understand what the meaning of that is. It would be like you have 87 or 91, right? That's your choice. And maybe a few of us know something about diesel. But it would be like if you grew up and you went to the grocery store and you had Camel's chicken noodle or tomato forever. And then one day somebody put in like chunky sirloin burger or something, and you just blow your, what would you do? I mean, maybe you'd get sick if you ate, I don't know, I mean, so it's, I think we find ourselves in a very interesting paradigm right now around understanding what our choices are, what they mean, and how to empower ourselves with those choices. The retail fueling business today, or where we have traditionally grocery store, right, where we get our petroleum, has developed into a very diverse business with a primary revenue stream coming out of a convenience store. I think there's been a misunderstanding from a lot of people out there that the so-called big oil can fix the alternative fuel problem by just simply turning on the spigot of alternative fuels. Well, in fact, they don't own retail. They own less than 5% of retail overall, and that number is dramatically declining as they sell off their remaining assets in this area. So it's very difficult for a single player in this space to really have much of an impact. The branded stations that you see that have a big oil brand are often, they're called branded independents, but often small owner-operator businesses, maybe 5 stations, maybe 10, oftentimes 1 or 2. And then you have unbranded independents, which make up about 40% of the rest of the stations that are out there. So if you ask station owners to provide, let's just say what's available now, a CNG station, an E85 pump, a biodiesel pump, you're asking them to put out a pretty tremendous capital outlay into a very small margin business that they own without a lot of certainty around that. So you're asking them to put capital into it, anywhere from $150,000 up, which is a lot of money. There's a lot of risk associated with finding a new fuel customer that doesn't traditionally visit their site. There's a lot of hassle associated with it, especially if you're working with the state or local grants. These guys often work at their stores. They don't have a lot of bandwidth or understanding to hire a grant writer or somebody to manage these at-risk monies. And there's no support. So they need to acquire a new fuel supplier oftentimes to get a biodiesel or ethanol or CNG. So when you add these things up, you can see why there's essentially no alternative fuel stations in the state of California at this point to speak of. Because if you're asking this demographic of businesses to sell alternative fuels, it's just not going to happen. And it just hasn't happened. So we believe we need a new retail model that gets over this barrier. For Propel, what we've done is built a model where we actually build and operate our own equipment that we deploy on either existing gas stations or what we call non-traditional sites. So we offered the gas station owner a chance to participate in the alternative fuels business with no investment on his side, no worry about the fuel supply, no worry about marketing to the customers. And what we do offer them is a straight revenue every month that's guaranteed with an upside potentially based on sales and new customers who will visit his convenience store, his or her convenience store, for incremental revenue growth. And we think it needs to be scalable because, as we talked about earlier, there are a lot of vehicles in California. I think LA County alone has more vehicles than any state before. It would be like the 5th biggest state for vehicle numbers. So there are a lot of vehicles, there are a lot of people in this state, and we need something that's going to be scalable that will be able to reach a lot of people to really have any meaningful impact on carbon reductions. So what we do is deploy equipment, have designed equipment that is very green in design, as low impact as we can make it, very small footprint, small power usage, LED lighting, etc. We try to find the best locations, and we do 8 to 12-year agreements with property owners. Everything is managed by a network, so these are all self-serve, kiosk-style fueling sites. We manage all the fuel procurement, all the credit card transactions, everything from a network operations center. So it's very efficient. So modern network efficiency is deployed to a gas station model.